Madam President. It is always welcome to hear those reassuring words of concern about alternative energy and renewables from the minority corner, which has always been a great partner in our efforts to advance our efforts around clean energy, the environment, and trying to keep down the cost of energy here in the Commonwealth. The bill that is before us is in part a bill that this Senate has already acted on, legislation to address a procedural hurdle in the process by which municipalities would seek to develop and use a resource that at once was thought as having no real use once it was capped, which is landfills in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. What we have realized as we have advanced our clean energy agenda here in Massachusetts is that those capped landfills do have an additional use. That use can be for the generation of renewable energy. One of the hurdles in the development of that energy has been previous deed restrictions that have been placed on any type of development or activity on that landfill moving forward. So what we do in the underlying bill that is now passed both the Senate and the House is address that to make the development of renewable energy on those landfills an allowable use. The House, in their version of the bill, passed in addition to it legislation that had already been advanced out of the Telecommunications, Utilities and Energy Committee, legislation that I supported, to extend the lifetime of ownership for our investor-owned utilities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for solar energy. One of the things that this Senate and this legislature did in the Green Communities Act was allow our investor-owned utilities for the first time since electric deregulation to own a certain type of generation. That type of generation being solar energy. In the Green Communities Act, the cap on the amount of energy available to be owned by any investor-owned utility at any given time or in the lifetime of their ownership was 50 megawatts. There was also in the Green Communities Act a sunset on the development of that solar owned by utilities, and there was also a reporting requirement that the administration report on the success or the efficacy of the program, how it was helping us meet our goals, what the cost of the program was, and whether or not it was an efficient public policy. Our thinking on that, or the recommendations out of the report, were ultimately to extend the ownership of solar energy by our investor-owned utilities to at least 2014. That is what we will do in the bill that is before us. As the gentleman also referenced, what we also do is bring down the amount of that solar energy that can be owned by any one investor-owned utility to 25 megawatts. It should be noted that none of the investor-owned utilities are currently close to that cap. And given the pace of this development and the change in the market, we felt at this point it made the most sense to proceed with caution, to say as we extend out the ownership time or the time for development of these projects, we will have the cap at 25 megawatts, knowing full well that we will have to revisit that cap with the 2014 deadline. So the thinking, at least at this point, was let's continue to revisit the policy to make sure it's continuing to produce the intended results, which I believe it is, and I believe it will continue to do so. I think the ownership by investor-owned utilities of solar generation helps ratepayers, it helps the environment, it helps the communities in which the projects are developed. I also believe that it helps the utilities and their relationships with private developers so they know the challenges of developing these projects and they can work to improve their systems and processes to best meet the needs of these developers as we try and move towards our nation-leading clean energy policy and clean energy goals. I should also point out that within the bill as well is clarification around the language in the original Green Communities Act for how these projects would be treated. If we do not have the language that we have inserted in this bill, you could argue, one could argue, and one could bring legal action such that the utilities could be forced to sell these projects that they have just developed if they were not given the clear authority and ability to continue to own the projects moving forward. So what we want to do is make sure there's a clear ownership structure moving forward. We want to make sure that we are measured moving forward in the amount that we allow to be owned and developed at any one given time, knowing full well that we ought to continue to revisit this and move forward to meet our goals. I believe the bill that is before us helps us best do that. I think it recognizes both the Senate and the House having passed both the landfill piece of legislation and utility ownership, and we know full well that our colleagues, hopefully, in the House are currently debating what to do with energy cost legislation that we have passed there as well, and we hope that this debate will continue between the two branches about how to best meet our clean energy, our environment, our climate goals, all with an eye towards doing so in the most cost-effective and efficient way possible. So, Madam President, I hope that the legislation is supported by my colleagues, and I hope the Minority Leader's questions are answered.
Comes an adoption of the further amendment. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate concurs in the House amendment with the further amendment.